screen. Hello everybody and welcome to the 5th Google Hangout session of the Pixel Project's 4th annual International Women's Day edition of the Pixel Pixel Read for Pixels campaign. I'm sorry about that. My name is Anusha Kandasivam. Through Read for Pixels, the Pixel Project is collaborating with 12 award-winning and best-selling authors to raise awareness about violence against women and to raise funds for the Celebrity Male Role Model Pixel Reveal campaign. We aim to raise $1 million to keep our efforts to end violence against women alive and kicking. Now, I'll be telling you more about the Read for Pixels fundraiser, which has lots and lots of exclusive author goodies a little later in the session. If you want to find out more about the Pixel Project, please do go to our website, thepixelproject.net. So for today's session, we have a wonderful guest. We have a live discussion and a Q&A session with the amazing Lauren Oliver. Lauren is the winner of the Nebula, Hugo, and World Fantasy Awards. She is the author of numerous young adult novels, including Panic, the Delirium trilogy, which is Delirium, Pandemonium, and Requiem, and Before I Fall. And Before I Fall became a major motion picture in 2017. Her novels have been translated into more than 30 languages internationally. So Lauren has very generously donated some very special goodies to the stash of author goodies that we have set up as perks for donors on our Read for Pixels Rally Up fundraising page. So we've bundled all these things together into 8 bundles. Each bundle is $75. So one Lauren Oliver book bundle comprises one first edition hardcover signed copy of Replica, one first edition hardcover signed copy of Ringer, one paperback signed copy of Before I Fall, and one Ringer bookmark. Now, here's the thing, guys. We just realized that the first edition hardcover copy of Replica is going for almost $50 on Amazon right now. And you get a signed hardcover first edition copy plus all other books for $75. And there are 8 book bundles. And what Lauren has done is, to be fair to all her fans, she's set aside 4 sets for international donors, meaning people outside the US, and 4 sets for US donors only. Now, all funds go towards the Pixel Project Celebrity Male Role Model Pixel Reveal campaign to help end violence against women. So please do give generously. I will be telling you how you can get your hands on these goodies a little later in the session and how you can help the cause and donate, so stay tuned for that. So Lauren is going to do a reading, and then we'll have a live discussion and Q&A. Now, we're having a little bit of technical problems today. It's really strange. Lauren can't hear us unless she has her headphones in, but we can't hear Lauren when she has her headphones in. So it's really weird, but we're trying to work around it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to type the questions out for Lauren into our group chat, and then she can read them and answer your questions. But I will also read the questions out so you guys can hear them. But anyway, we'll hopefully this works. Okay, I'm gonna change the screen to Lauren right now, and then Lauren can proceed with her reading, and then we can continue with the Q&A. Here you are, Lauren.
Hi.
Hello.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm very, very happy to be reading and answering questions for such a good cause, one that I certainly feel strongly about and believe it. So I'm going to actually read. I'm going to give you a short teaser from Replica, which is, as we said, as Anusha said, this is the signed first edition will be part of the package of goodies that you receive if you donate. So I chose to read from this. I had quite a few to read from, actually. Not that it relates specifically, although the thing about Replica that's kind of cool about it is that Replica is a story that features 2 female protagonists, and their stories interweave and intertwine over the course of the novel. And I will show you that actually it's a cool book because it can be read one of 2 ways. So you just actually flip it upside down to read Lyra's story and then Gemma's story. And you can read the book either the way through. You can read it in several different ways. So you can read it all the way through Gemma's side, and then all the way through Lyra's Side, or you can read it all the way through Lyra's Side, then all the way through Gemma's Side, or you can read it in alternating chapters. It was a nightmare to write. Anyway, so I'm going to read, actually, since there are two protagonists and they're basically two independent novels that are interlinked, I'm going to read both short first chapters. And I'm going to start with Lyra's Side. On very still nights, sometimes we can hear them chanting, calling for us to die. We can see them too, or at least make out the halo of light cast up from the shores of Barrel Key, where they must be gathered, staring back across the black expanse of water toward the fence and the angular white face of the Haven Institute. From that distance, it must look like a long green jaw set with miniature teeth. Monsters, they call us, demons. Sometimes, on sleepless nights, we wonder if they're right. Lyra woke up in the middle of the night with the feeling that someone was sitting on her chest. Then she realized it was just the heat, thick, swampy and thick, like the pressure of somebody's hand. The power had gone down. Something was wrong. People were shouting. Doors slammed. Footsteps echoed in the halls. Through the window, she saw the zigzag pattern of flashlights cutting across the courtyard, illuminating silvery specks of rain, and the stark white statue of a man reaching down toward the ground as though to pluck something from the earth. The other replicas came awake simultaneously. The dorm was suddenly full of voices, thick with sleep. At night, it was easier to speak. There were fewer nurses to shush them. What's wrong? What's happened? Be quiet. That was Cassiopeia. I'm listening. The door from the hall swung open so hard it cracked against the wall. Lyra was dazzled by a sudden sweep of light. They all here? It sounded like Dr. Coffee Breath. I think so. Nurse, don't even think about it. His voice was high and terrified. Her face was invisible behind the flashlight. Lyra could make out the long hem of her nightgown and her bare feet. Well, count them. We're all here, Cassiopeia responded. One of them gasped. But Cassiopeia was never afraid to speak. What's going on? It must be one of the males, Dr. Coffee Breath said to Nurse, don't even think about it, who was really named Maxine. Who's checking the mails? What's wrong? Cassiopeia repeated. Lyra found herself touching the windowsill, the pillow, the headboard of bed number 24, her things, her world. At that moment, the answer came to them, voices shrill, calling to one another, code black, code black, code black. Almost at the same time, the backup generator kicked on. The lights came up, and with them, the alarms. Sirens wailed, lights flashed in every room. Everyone squinted in the sudden brightness. Nurse, don't even think about it, stumbled backwards, raising an arm as though to shield herself from view. Stay here, Dr. Coffee Breath said. Lyra wasn't sure whether he was speaking to Nurse, don't even think about it, or to the replicas. Either way, there wasn't much choice. Dr. Coffee Breath had to let himself into the hall with a code. Nurse, don't even think about it, stayed for only a moment, shivering, her back to the door, as if she expected that at any second all the girls might make a rush at her. Her flashlight, now subsumed by the overheads, cast a milk-white ring on the tile floor. Ungrateful, she said, before she, too, let herself out. Even then, they could see her through the windows overlooking the hall, occasionally touching her cross. What's code black? Rose asked, hugging her knees to her chest. They'd run out of stars ever since Dr. O'Donnell, the only staff member Lyra had never nicknamed, had stopped giving them lessons. Instead, the replicas selected names for themselves from the collection of words they knew. Words that struck them as pretty or interesting. There was rose, palm olive, and private, lilac springs, and tide. There was even a fork. As usual, only Cassiopeia, number 6, one of the oldest replicas besides Lyra, knew. Code black means security's down, she said. Code black means that someone's escaped. So that is the first chapter of Lyra, and just so you see how they go together, it's an even shorter chapter, just read you Gemma, her first chapter. Escape. That was what Gemma was dreaming of, especially on nights like this one, when the moon was so big and bright it looked like it was a set piece in a movie, hooked outside her window on a curtain of dark night sky. In movies, teenagers were always sneaking out. They'd wait until their parents went to bed, ease out from under their blankets, already dressed in miniskirts and tank tops, slide down the stairs and unlatch the lock and pop. They burst out into the night like balloons squeezing through a narrow space only to explode. Other teenagers, Gemma guessed, didn't have Rufus, a 75-pound retriever who seemed to consist entirely of fur, tongue, and vocal cords. Shh, Gemma hissed as Rufus greeted her at the bottom of the stairs, wiggling so hard she was surprised he didn't fall over. Are you all right? She'd been awake for only a minute, but already her mother was at the top of the stairs, squinting because she didn't have her contacts in, dressed in an old Harvard t-shirt and sweatpants. I'm fine, Mom. Gemma grabbed a glass from the cabinet. She would never sneak out. Not that she had anywhere to sneak out to or anyone to sneak out with, since April's parents kept her just as leashed up as Gemma's did. Still, she imagined for a second that she was halfway to the door, dressed in tight jeans and a shirt that showed off her boobs, the only part of her body she actually liked, on her way to hop into her boyfriend's car instead of standing in a darkened kitchen in her pajamas at 11 p.m. on a Wednesday night, while Rufus treated her ankles to one of his signature lick jobs. Just needed some water. Are you dehydrated? Her mom said dehydrated, as if it meant dying. I'm fine. Gemma rattled the ice in her glass as she returned to the stairs, deliberately avoiding her mom's eyes. Go back to bed, okay? Her mom, Christina, hesitated. Let me know if you need anything, all right? Uh-huh. Gemma shut her bedroom door in Rufus's face, not caring that he immediately began to whine. She set the water on her bedside table and flapped back onto the bed. The moon made squares on her bare legs, cutting her skin into portions of light and shadow. She briefly let herself imagine what Chloe DeWitt and Aubrey Connolly were doing at that very second. She'd always been told she had a vivid imagination, but she just couldn't picture it. What was it like to be so totally, fundamentally, ruthlessly normal? What did they think about? What were their problems? Did they have any problems? Rufus was still whining. Gemma got out of bed and let him in, sighing as he bounded immediately onto the bed and settled down exactly in the center of her pillow. She wasn't tired yet, anyway. She sat down at the vanity that had once belonged to her mother, an ornate Victorian antique she loved as a child and hadn't been able to tell Christina she'd outgrown. She'd never been able to tell her parents much of anything. The moon made hollows of her eyes in the mirror, turning her skin practically translucent. She wondered if this was how her parents always saw her, a half-ghost, hovering somewhere between this life and the next. But she wasn't sick anymore. She hadn't been sick in years, not since she was a little kid. Still, they treated her as if she might suddenly blow away, like a human house of cards disturbed by the lightest touch. She herself could barely remember all those years of sickness. The hospital, the operations, the treatments. Coping, her therapist said, an adaptive defense. She did remember a garden, and a statue too. A kneeling god, she thought, but she couldn't be sure, with one arm raised to the sky and the other reaching toward the ground, as though to draw something magic from the earth. That's it.
It was great.
Taking out my headphones.
Okay, that was great, and that's such a cool book, such a cool way to write a book with two different stories. I can only imagine how difficult it was. Okay, so guys, we're gonna go into the Q&A session right now. Like I said before, we're having a bit of a sound issue where Lauren can't hear us unless she has her headphones in, and we can't hear Lauren when she doesn't have her headphones in. So, like I said, I'm going to read the questions out loud. And I will also type the questions out into the group chat so that Lauren can read them out herself. And hopefully it all works. We shall see. Okay. Lauren, are you there? Okay, there she is. Okay, so we're going to start with the first question. The first question being, your novels feature a wide range of female characters who are independent, intelligent, and complex young women who go through tough personal journeys. Could you tell us who and what are the inspirations behind your female characters?
I have a lot of female friends. I'm a real, I'm a girl's girl. I mean, I have a lot of male friends too. They're great in different ways. We're simple people. No, but I mean, I really do. I mean, I've my three best friends from when I have the same three best friends when I was literally in first grade. I'm so blessed to have just this kind of incredibly rich, very, very, I think very widespread, diverse, and really meaningful, depthful relationships with all of the with many, many female friends. And I also have a sister with whom I'm very close. It's interesting because in anticipation of this chat, I kind of understood and knew or anticipated what some of the questions would be, but also I don't know, my experience of women, I was thinking the other day, I don't really write strong female characters because I'm trying to inspire, or because I'm trying to show young women what's possible. I write them because I see that as a reflection of who young women already are. I think that it takes a lot of heroism. The sheer act of being a woman in this world takes a lot of courage and bravery, unfortunately. And it's still a world in which, women are constricted, bound, told to have specific forms, take on shapes, take on expectations, and told to be quiet and told to be pleasers and told to placate. So I've always been amazed by the everyday heroism of how much more difficult it is and more frightening in many ways to be a woman in this world. So again, like, I don't write my female characters as a form of inspiration, but it really is a reflection of what I already see. Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's interesting you say that, because there are many instances of female characters in YA books that are stereotyped to be a certain way or act a certain way because they are female. How do you work around gender stereotypes to create empowered female characters with agency? And when you are writing female characters, do you ever feel pressured to make them likable or relatable?
Was about some of the most, the main character started off as one of the most despicable in the canon of YA characters. She was she was incredibly cruel. She was, was told from the perspective of a bully. And her best friend Lindsay is also an incredible mean girl. They're the protagonists. And, it does not excuse, minimize. It's pretty difficult to read their behavior. It doesn't actually mitigate it. And ultimately, the main character does have to reconcile her incredible superficiality, or not even superficiality. It's kind of a depthful cruelty. But it also, I think that you write a bad novel if your characters are not fully humanized. And the real truth is very, very few people in the world, besides total sociopaths, are one-dimensional. And to me, what's important is to be able to create realistic characters. And the truth is like, all people are really motivated by the same things. And the things that they're motivated by are, again, profound. They're motivated by a desire to be loved, and they're motivated by a desire to be safe and to go home. Now, the cultural expressions of how they set out to achieve that might look very different. And some of them might even appear on the surface to be superficial things. But as a writer, your job is to imbue the surface that we see, is to understand that the surface we see when we encounter anybody in the world is that. It's a surface. It's usually also somewhat of a lie. It's often a dysfunctional lie that serves increasingly to inhibit what we actually want. And so, I think that I see that as the role of any person. In some ways, I think that is why I also love writing about women too, is because we're asked to take on so many dysfunctional lies. And over the course of a novel, it's your ability to begin to peel away the layers and expose to readers so that they have some awareness, so that they're not capable of dismissing, both women and girls, but also people in general, based on these kind of the dysfunctional lies that we all send out as avatars as we first meet people in the world.
Okay. We're seeing more of the Hermione effect now in pop culture, where especially for YA books with lots of strong and capable and complex female protagonists. Has that trend influenced your creative decisions in any way? And do you think that there are enough of these realistic female characters in pop culture?
Look, like my friend, we were happy to collaborate with an amazing woman, who stars in Jessica Jones, Kristen Ritter, when she did her first novel, Bonfire, which is a great, great, great novel. Everybody should check it out. Little Kristen Ritter plug. But no, it was really like a brilliant woman, incredibly has a multitudinous of creative talents. And I was thinking the other day, like, Jessica Jones is such a big thing because, you have tons of TV shows that are named after one male character. There's a whole canon of them. And there might be an average of, 17 or 18 that come out on any given year. Jessica Jones was really pioneering because it's one of the only shows, I think it might be the only show, in which a single woman's name is the title. So of course I don't think there's enough. And I think that, once we are not asking ourselves the question, once we've stopped being able to count, once we've stopped being able to tally, then that will probably mean that there are enough. Once it's literally something that nobody thinks about anymore, then it would mean that there were enough. We're very different. We're very, we're not there yet. I mean, has it changed my creative decisions? No, although I mean, it has definitely created different space. It's hard to distinguish because I also simultaneously to kind of this somewhat revolutionary, I mean, definitely a pivotal linchpin moment in the transition of representation, specifically, I mean, for a lot of different populations, not just for women, including for people of color and for underrepresented groups, vastly underrepresented groups in the media culture. We've taken some steps. I mean, at least people are thinking about it. They're belated and probably insufficient, but at least we're thinking about it. And, you're starting to see, so at the same time, I've started to see inroads in not just the book industry, but I've started to be writing in Hollywood a lot now. Like I'm doing a lot of screenplays and stuff like that. So it's a little hard to disambiguate between what has changed based on the possibilities that I've seen and what has changed kind of in the new medium for me. But I definitely feel that I'm able to, like I'm doing all of my projects, every project I'm doing for Hollywood, is like one scimitar away from like a female revenge or empowerment story. So, and it's getting a lot of enthusiastic reception so far in the process. So that's really cool. It's really cool to be able to see that happening. So I do think that there have been, I guess I started by saying, no, it hasn't influenced my creative decisions at all, but I think it has just by also expanding the playing field. Expanding the mediums in which I can tell these stories.
Okay, that's really cool that it's happening. Let's talk about female relationships. So there is a love triangle in the DELIRIUM trilogy, but the friendship between Lena and Hannah is incredibly important relationship, and we've just seen some female relationships in the story that you just read. Did you intend to make their friendship a major component of the story, and what are the challenges of writing this friendship? Do you still think that positive female friendships are not very common in fantasy fiction, including dystopian YA?
Love triangle in Delirium. I had no idea what you meant at first, and then I remember. I mean, it's actually not in Delirium. It's not till it's Pandemonium. Although it's really not actually a love triangle until Requiem, because for most of Pandemonium, one of the characters is dead. So actually, it's not until the third book in the trilogy that we get the love triangle. Now, I thought originally, it's so funny because when you originally said that about Delirium, I was like, oh, yeah, but Hannah and Lena aren't fighting over Alex. I thought you meant the two. Right. But that's a sign of how actually... Yeah. In Delirium, the friendship between the two main girls, Hannah and Lena, is really hugely, a huge part of it. And actually, Hannah ends up through the course of the series, certainly in Requiem, having as much of an impact in how the entire Requiem unfolds as anybody else in the book. I mean, I didn't. People kept pushing me to put in a boy's point of view, one of the boys' points of view, but it wasn't. It was Lena and Hannah's. So, female friendships are really at the heart of my life, as I said before. I mean, when I got legally married to my husband, we did so in a private ceremony in our home, and the people in attendance were his mother and his father and his grandmother and his brothers and their wives, and the people in attendance were my three best friends, who I've known since I was in first grade. That was it. Those are my family. Those girls raised me. I've always felt like nobody's ever been able to break my heart quite so badly as one of my friends. And female friendships are complex. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean, that's one of the beauties and miracles about them. And one of the things that I think is explored in Delirium, and the reason for a second, is that there is tension when Alex comes along, but not because they're fighting over her, but more because, Alex is jeopardizing. Alex is taking some of Lena's attention and love, Hannah feels, away from her. And also Lena started to have experiences that Hannah doesn't have. And that Hannah postulated that she would have had or would have been the one to have. And then suddenly confronted with the fact, it leads to identity collapse and all this stuff. So I also believe in showing, the real ways in which our friends, and actually Broken Things, I'm really excited about my next novel, which comes out this fall. Broken Things is very, very loosely based on the Slender Man case. You know, Broken Things is also, it's about all of the dimensions of female relationships. There's one of the main character is falling in love with the best friend of the other main character. They're both women. And there's two female points of view, and it's about this kind of toxic friendship that they'd had with their third friend back 5 years ago, who was found murdered in the woods subsequently, and they were blamed for it. They did not do it. That's not a spoiler. But it is also about the way that, like, we can have friendships that seduce us, that kind of feel almost, with women, almost intoxicating, almost romantic, that are almost romantic, but they're not sexual, and the way that girls we can love them, and they can scare us, and they can have control over us and bully us, and also defend us and be our biggest protectors. Like, all of the different sides, that the myriad ways, because I think that one of the biggest things about girls is that we're not allowed to be more than one thing. We're always being polarized into one or the other. And we are forced to live this incredible slender line between two paradoxes, right? Like, between a paradox, right? Like, so, I mean, you know, one of the biggest, obviously, cultural and religious icons we have is the idea of a perfect mother, but only whose motherhood is contained in her virginity as well. So things that are literally impossible, we are asked to emulate. And I think that one of the things that I really want to show, and why I love Broken Things, and why I loved Hannah and Lena, why I loved the female friendships in Before I Fall, because Lindsay was a monster, and also Lindsay would do anything for her friends, right? And there's some beauty in that as well. And so I really want to show all of the, again, multifaceted dimensions that girls are. And I want to show that because I know it's true. And then you just have to spend your whole life planing away your edges for everybody else and burying your true self deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And that's what society's asked us to do. But it doesn't mean that great multifaceted jewel isn't actually the truth.
Yeah. Which kind of brings me sort of to my next question. Going back to Hannah and Lena, their relationship with other women in the book, including there's her mother, there's Grace, the cousin. They define Lena so much more than just the relationship she has with the men. It might be surprising, especially with mainstream assumption, especially in YA, that love equals boy plus girl. So, like you just said just now, why is it so important to include all these multifaceted relationships between women?
So I keep going back to being like, I have a life that is full and rich and full of love, and I'm happily married. And I also I don't see other people. I mean, part of it is probably that I've always been relatively independent, but I just don't, and have never seen. I think of love as basically being two individuals walking side by side who are close enough to high five, right? Not that love is a way that you find somebody who can define your boundaries for you. In fact, in many ways, I think of my female friendships and my relationship with sister as far more fundamental to my sense of identity, because I started really a lot earlier. You know what I mean? By the time I met, some people don't have that experience. But by the time I met my husband, I was engaged twice before my husband. Third time's a charm, and I was in my 30s. I was 31 when I met him, or 30. So I was pretty grown. But actually, it's funny you say that. That was a deliberate thing. I actually wanted to write about love as a topic, and as a topic, you have to think about all the dimensions. I would never have been able to write just a book that postulates that romantic love is the only kind of love, which is a really impoverished understanding of how rich our world is, and how lucky we are also. And we, cultures, I have to say, cultures that do a better job of celebrating networks, right? Networks of cousins and family and siblings and neighbors and friends, they are healthier and happier. We were not made to be isolated. We were not made to be isolated with one person. That is not how humans evolve. We are like group animals, you know? So I had deliberately wanted to treat, because like also I'm kind of like a cynical New Yorker. So I really do. I love romantic love. And I also see that romantic love of the kind that one can term true love is built so much more on the daily choices, on the daily ways in which you, again, over time, walk a path with somebody, walk a very difficult path with them, care for them when they're sick, and not in the transporting romantic moments, because those basically are a product of biochemistry. I'm sorry. So for all of those reasons, so that's actually, I'd set out to write with love as a topic, but not just romantic love, love in all of its forms, between mother and daughter, between siblings, and between friends. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because that's the way the world actually is. It's unfortunate that we don't always see that in the books that we read. Okay, so let's talk about men. So I've noticed that toxic masculinity and outright violence against women and victim blaming are issues that are conspicuously absent in your writing. Did you decide not to engage in these subjects intentionally, or did you want to portray a reality without these issues?
Because in general, I do feel that, it's your job to present reality. I think here's why. I would never be able to just incidentally include that kind of violence against women, because it would have to be the whole point of the story. That stuff is very difficult for me to write about. I was, I actually was a stripper and worked in the sex industry, on and off through college, starting from when I was really young, 18. And I don't like to talk about it, so I won't. I mean, I'm not ashamed of it, but I really haven't figured out what the narrative of that story was. It was not necessarily the healthiest decisions to be making at that time. And I was exposed to a lot of really, really, really scary stuff in retrospect, and stuff that I thought was totally normal at the time that is not normal. And I've never been able to write about it because I just have too many complex feelings about it. And so I think that it's not an attempt to not show it. It's just that, like, I don't see that as something that you can kind of accidentally cover. And yet it's too hard for me. It opens up too much for me to be able to just treat that as the sole subject. That said, I am taking my meticulously and ponderous time to write a horror film. It's kind of like a female Get Out, but even more like a horror. I mean, it's so ridiculous to call it a female Get Out, because Get Out is brilliant. But, like, it's the best way to describe it. But it's about female experience. It's about violence against women. It's also about gaslighting. It's also about victim blame. I mean, I'm trying to get in a lot. We'll see how successful it is. Somehow in that form, in that medium, because I realized that actually horror films, especially the ones where, you feature a woman, you pit her against somebody, if she's going to end up running in a tank top, I realized that they're actually, like, really perfect metaphoric representations of what it's like to be a woman, right? Because you become a hero, but only by playing a game and being in a narrative you didn't choose in the first place. And also that at a certain point, you can either choose to die and preserve your innocence, or you can choose to weaponize the damage that they've done to you and survive. And so, like, anyway, so I am working on that. But I think that's why I can't do it incidentally. And, like, even to a certain extent, that's why, like, all of the romantic guy characters in my books, I mean, I didn't really grow up thinking, like, God loved Twilight and all of those books. But, I mean, and I really do. I mean, they must be, obviously they struck an incredible nerve for so many people, and they're transporting. I believe they're also metaphors about fears of losing your virginity, but we can talk about that some other time. Yeah. I mean, some guy's going to sit on your bed. He might try to penetrate you, draw blood, and then change you forever into a monster. Come on, guys.
Yeah.
But I do think it's like in my house, I would just, if you can't tell if a guy's going to maybe kill you or if he's trying to kiss you, you just call the police. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, most of the men in my books, the romantic boys, they're best friends and they're very kind. And, what you should what you should be looking for, in my opinion.
Yeah. So, which kind of brings me to the next question, which is the male-female relationships in your writing. The women, they do make decisions without incurring the wrath of the male characters. Did you feel it was a meaningful aspect to show readers the importance of respecting women as equals and human beings?
I also like, I don't know. That's a really hard question. It kind of breaks my heart to answer. Of course, I mean, because women are human beings. And also, like, these books are about women, where they're the heroes, and like women are human beings. We have agency. We're souls made from God, or quantum physics, whatever you believe, like, right? Or quantum physics is God, whatever. But the point is like, we are here. We're real. We're our own people. So yeah, I mean, I didn't consciously think about it as being important to show, but of course it's important to show because that's reality and that's true. And I do. I mean, also I just, you have to love your characters. But I guess I'm thinking about that also too, just in the context of even side characters. But yeah, I mean, I guess I live in a world where I have tried as much as I can my whole life to emancipate myself from the crushing burdens of what other people expect of you, want for you, the version that they want for you and of you. And it's complicated and hard because it's also like you have to make sure that you can also still function within a network, right? Like you can't just be a solo trajectory. And it's a really hard balance. And I don't think I've always done it correctly. And I may not be doing it correctly now. But I do know that I've always from the time, right from around the time I was an early teenager, I just wanted to have the right to live my own life the way that I wanted to live it. And I know how hard it is. It's a lifetime work, but I guess that is also I think that's also part of sometimes the journeys that the girls are actually going on. I mean, that is what Gemma's journey is explicitly almost in the Replica series. So.
Okay, so do you think that, okay, so relationships in fantasy, some science fiction sometimes, for young adults they often don't have a clear line when it comes to consent and coercion and what is healthy. Do you think this is an issue that is often glossed over, or do you think it's being handled decently in current books?
To be honest, I don't know that I've read enough. I don't know that I have enough context for that. I mean, I think here's the thing. I think that it's very important the only important thing to come across, by the way, there's an amazing ringer sex scene, which is handled beautifully. So if you want steamy, loving, because both characters play a game, they consent to play a game where they've been their whole lives treated like medical objects. And the girl and the boy, Lyra, and this boy, Caleb, they rediscover each other's bodies slowly, going back and forth, right? To see who can like kiss the most parts and who can touch and what does it feel like, right? Because they've kind of almost separated from their bodies, dissociated from their body. I think that it's important the only thing that I think is important to show is that sex is about two people who are mutually agreeing to seek pleasure with and for the other person. Mm-hmm. But they are mutually agreeing to go on a co-journey of pleasure. That's it. So, I mean, I think, because it's important that it's like, to some extent, it's like some of the ways that we talk about consent even now make it seem as though the girl is essentially consenting to what the guy is allowed to do to her.
Yeah.
Right? And that is not sex. You are consenting to what you are agreeing to do together as individuals, right? Some of that will involve him being a little more active and you being a little more active here. But that is, so that's, I guess, what I'm taking not umbrage to, but that is, I think, something that is vastly getting missed from the very important discussions about consent, because you're not just checking off boxes about what you agree somebody else can do to you. That takes away your agency, but also the point of the pleasure that it's supposed to bring you. It removes you still in a way from the situation. You basically just say, like, here is the colors you are allowed to use on my blank palette. as opposed to like, okay, let's both pick up a brush and start painting. But that said, I don't know that I've read enough places where science fiction, certainly where I know a lot of it comes out, because even when you go to Comic-Con, you see cosplay signs around consent at the conventions. But I don't know that I've read enough to really, but I'm not surprised if it's not clear. I mean, like, unfortunately, actually, it is the purview of popular culture to kind of increasingly take on that burden, because it's certainly not happening in our political landscape. And that's why I always say that the first way that I would try to fix the dysfunctions around our sexual culture, I would start in popular culture, or start in music videos, and I would start with porn, right? Not to get rid of it, but to show this like mutual pleasure seeking, fun, two grown-ups, whatever, being in a single experience that is about both of them. So, but yes, I mean, I trust that if the question's coming from somewhere, it's not because we're doing a great job already.
Okay. Well, let's move on to, you were speaking about conventions and consent, and so my next question is, geek culture in general, including science fiction and fantasy, has had its share of critics saying that it's too male-dominated, despite a rising number of prominent, well-respected, well-known female authors. What do you think needs to be done to make geek culture as a whole, whether it's comics or gaming or books, more welcoming for women and girls?
I think partly, I mean, look, representation is a big thing, right? Because I mean, part of it is just about the sheer quantity of action figures and heroes and whatever that are dominated by that are male representations of power. The way that women have traditionally been depicted in things like comic books and graphic novels, which is basically as side characters or, incredibly sexualized ones. But also, I think that, because again, it's like, even if you were then at a convention, if you're a woman playing a female part, you're going to be modeling a female role that is based on presumably, something that amplifies or relates to your sexuality. I mean, that stuff happens slowly. I mean, it will probably also take somebody coming in and creating a organization that helps female illustrators, right? Like that does and like looks for graphic novels that are specifically featuring casts of female characters, and then we can kind of establishing at the start a female only kind of space for these things to happen, and then slowly integrating them. Because also some of it is just the sheer it's just math, it's numbers, right? So it's like the same thing can be said about business. You can talk all you want about the need for equal pay, but the truth is when 97% of CEOs in this country are men, then we're going to have problems. So generating ways to just increasingly place women first by sometimes, again, starting business-only organizations for networking for women, right? Like the female equivalent of the old boys clubs, and then slowly integrating us back to the same world. But I think some of that's going to have to happen for geek culture as well. But so I think people who are also, a lot of it, unfortunately in America, it always comes down to money. Showing the viability of female-centric science fiction stories, of female-centric, whatever, action figures, and I do think some of it's starting to change, but it's slow. It's slow, and it has a lot of, again, there's a mathematical lack of parity that is significant enough that it will take a while.
I'm typing a question in for Lauren, so just bear with me, guys. So my question is, well, Lauren was talking about, speaking of female-centric, oh yeah, she can hear me. She doesn't have a headphones in. So speaking of female-centric science fiction and fantasy, Black Panther just came out. It's not, I mean, the lead is not a female, but he was surrounded by strong female characters. His mom, his sister, his love interest, the female warriors around him, and they were all just there because they were the best at their jobs. They weren't like, it didn't push it in your face like, oh look, it's a woman and she's a warrior. She was just there because she was great at her job. So do you think that things are changing right now? Because obviously, Black Panther showed that this kind of thing is, you can make money out of it, and people do like this kind of movies and this kind of pop culture. Do you think it's we're heading in the right direction?
Of course. I mean, and not just look, like, you can't, I'm half Jewish, and one of the things, I mean, we're really not a religious family, but one of the things that I've always loved is there's a moment in Passover. I celebrate both. I celebrate Easter and Passover because I'm half Catholic too. But there's a moment where it says that, like, you pause for just because Passover is a ceremony that it's a Seder, kind of relates back to, the historical biblical injustice in which there was Jews enslaved in Egypt. But you pause for all the people who have any amount of injustice in their life, because as part of the Jewish tradition, they don't believe that anybody is free while anybody is enslaved. And that can mean metaphorically. And I would say, like, we are definitely heading in the right direction. It's also, I don't want to go over the fact that for years in Hollywood, nobody would have thought that putting a person of color, a Black man, as a lead of a movie would have been able to open a movie. They wouldn't have done it. That was common wisdom, right? And so that too in itself, I mean, of course, it's a huge sign. And not just the lead, right? Like, that it's predominantly, almost exclusively, a movie filled with people of color.
Yeah,
now,
I think there were like 2 white people.
Of course, we're going in the right direction. Same thing with A Wrinkle in Time. That said, of course, we're getting backlash because, every time there's a first Black female director or whatever, it's almost like they have to be perfect. They have to be, the first has to be the best, or it means that it doesn't work at all. So it's going to be full of stumbling blocks, but absolutely that makes a huge difference. That's why I said, like, money does matter, right? And it's also, by the way, not like A Wrinkle in Time, made pittance. It made $33 million. I mean, it went behind Black Panther, but, like, how amazing that the 2 biggest movies, it's really kind of incredible, and not something that would have happened even like 3 years ago. I mean, really, truly. So of course, and it's a very exciting time as a result. It's really thrilling, actually, because it's also leading to just, an opening up of avenues for so many more people and for so many more voices. And so everybody, as a result, is forced to get better, because there's just more competition, there's more perspectives, there's more dynamism, and there's also more opportunity for collaboration and for the collaborative friction that leads to truly great work. Because I do think that collaboration is like a flint, is that what it's called? I literally don't know how to start a fire. But, like, that thing you strike, you need a little bit of friction, you need a little bit of air and space in between to get great things. And so, and I mean, I go to LA every month, and you can also just see the quantity of women who are around, who are producing. I mean, it is definitely starting to percolate to change. Do I think that we will have backlash against it? Do I think that there might be periods where we try to constrict and constrain? Yes. Do I think overall this is a sign that we are marching towards something that is not going to be permanently revocable? Yes, thank God.
Yeah, we all hope so. Okay, so now I want to hear your opinion on what role you think men can play in stopping violence against women. And do you have a male role model that comes to mind?
Male role models. I mean, I think one of the things that men have to understand, I try to encourage this in all my male friends, is that, standard ways of referring to women in terms that are derogatory, like the standard, what I guess what you would turn, I don't even like the term microaggressions, but a way of, that those are actually the lessons that most people will see and internalize. Like, what I try to explain to men is that essentially, as a woman, you are taking in thousands of invisible cues to try to determine whether you're safe. And there's many, many, many. In fact, I truly believe that most men are not monsters. Most men are good. But they also don't understand, I think, how frightening it is to also be, first of all, at a physical disadvantage. It is true for the most part that almost exclusively men are physically stronger than women. Good news is we're the only ones who can create human life. So that's not even a physical comparison. You can take your biceps, I'll take my ability to make a baby. But like, that's just a thing. And so what we do is we look for invisible cues. And I think, what I try to encourage with men is to say, I am learning whether I'm safe, not from the fact that I most of the time leave my house and somebody's going to be beating somebody, but it's from what people around me are saying. And if I hear what people around me are saying, what I hear what they tolerate, I am internalizing that those people are not safe. Even if I believe you are the kind of man who would literally, if he saw something being done against a woman, intervene, which is every single one of my male friends, because I wouldn't obviously be friends with somebody who wouldn't do that. But I don't see that happen. And I hope I never have to see that happen, right? And so as a result, all I see, all your daughters see, all the women around you see, your coworkers, is they hear you speak. If you speak about women, they hear you demean. And I also think the way that men can look, I think another thing that I really think is important for women to know, and men when they're in conversation about this, I used to just get so angry as soon as somebody, even, and when something would come out that I was like, how could you say that and not, and like, how could you believe that? How could you say it? And I would get so furious, I would shut down for days. And finally, I realized, like, what if they really just don't know? Like, what if they just don't understand, right? And giving people the opportunity, and men the opportunity to engage with you and to explain, and then to also, have a conversation is really, really important. Because I do think that, again, I am seeing it even among the men I know, right? That they are starting to think in ways, look, I wasn't able to think. I didn't spend my whole life thinking about the injustices of the fact that everybody on TV I saw was white. I never thought about that. That's a terrible thing that I didn't think about it, but I did it because I'm white. Like, I'm not proud to admit that, but it did take a conversation with other people, with people who, like, before I suddenly had a light bulb off, like, oh my God, I cannot believe what it would be like to go your whole life and never see the star of the beautiful girl on TV and never see the billboards with face on them. It took me a really long time. So I think, patience, and also continuing to engage in hard conversations where you have to admit embarrassing things like I just did, shameful things, where you have to welcome other people's perspective into your life. We have to both, like, that's what we should, the good, and then the men who do not step up and want to engage with you like that, I don't know, just report them, send a SWAT team to their house. I don't know.
Okay. All right. So we're kind of heading to the end of the session. I think I'll just ask the last question. Okay, and it's kind of an obvious question, but we ask this to all the authors that we hang out with. So the question is, Lauren, you have been so incredibly supportive of this Read for Pixels campaign and our anti-violence against women work in general. So could you tell us why you support the cause to end violence against women, and in your opinion, how can authors like yourself best support efforts to kick off social change to end violence against women?
Obviously, donate, right? Donate to the Pixel Project, donate to other organizations. And, I think that just continued patience, and also uncategorical lack of tolerance for and even minimum expressions of violence against women, right? That take the form of what you will normally and socially see, right? Insulting and even online, I think is really important. Why do I want to end it? I mean, well, because I believe that all humans are equally valuable, except for sociopaths, who I do not believe are people. But otherwise, let's talk about real humans. I think all humans are equally valuable, and I do not believe that one can any single one should be compromisable, ownable, or diminishable by another. I just don't believe that. So it's really, really critical, and I think it's equally the reason to support it too is that I feel that it's so important for people to be able to, who have any degree of power and voice, to use that to speak up for and to support those who are have less power and who cannot use their voices. So, I think that, looking for opportunities like this one to support, and like you said, I mean, continuing to just flood popular culture with a vast array of real representations of women, so much so that over time it just gets into people's hearts and souls in a way, right? And I do think also there's a role, there's really one of the things that has to stop in that is thinking that boys' stories are for girls and boys, and that girls' stories are for only girls. Because you also just need the ability, if men grow up creatively and imaginatively empathizing with women, because they're the stars and heroes of the stories they love, you don't really have to do very much else. Like over time, that becomes a way in which you imaginatively empathize. You've been imaginatively empathizing with women your whole life. And it is very, very difficult to demean somebody and to diminish them and to be violent against somebody that you truly believe is a human and that you can truly understand. You have to dehumanize them first. So just continuing to represent, women as humans, a radical concept.
Yeah. I know. It's strange that, people just don't think about things like that. We are human. Okay, so hi guys, it's me again. Now, I promised to tell you about the author goodies we were giving away. As I mentioned earlier, Lauren has generously donated some really cool goodies that we put together into 8 bundles. So each bundle comprises one hardcover signed copy of Replica, one hardcover signed copy of Ringer, and one paperback signed copy of Before I Fall, and a Ringer bookmark. Now, the copies of Replica and Ringer are first editions, and they're pretty hard to come by. So each bundle is going for about $75, and we know that Replica, at least the first edition hardcover, kind of usually sells for about $50. So you're getting a really good deal. And there are eight bundles, to be fair. So Lauren has set up 4 sets for US donors only and 4 sets for international donors. These are donors outside the US. So everybody has a chance to get some. So here, and also we have plenty more author goodies available besides Lauren's, and we have stuff from Lynn Llewellyn, Karen Rose, Kandara Blake, Carrie Vaughn, Molly Hopper, and so many more. So all you have to do is donate, and I'm going to share a little screen, a little slide here. Hope you guys can see it. There it is. Can you see it, Lauren? Okay, cool. So go to the so that's the web address. It's is.gd/r4p-rallyup IWD 2018. It's case sensitive, so make sure you type it out correctly. And if you want to learn more about our Read for Pixel sessions, go to is.gd/read4pixel.
I don't know if they can see. Okay, it's flashing.
Oh, is it? Oh dear. Okay, well, our chatbox moderator Regina is going to type the link. Is going to put the link up for you there, so you can go access it from there as well. So please do give generously. Oops. I'm going to stop that. It's not working at all. I hope it didn't make anybody dizzy. Okay, so Regina's going to give you the links in the chat box. So to find out more about the Celebrity Male Role Model Pixel Reveal campaign to end violence against women and how you can help to end violence against women, please do visit the Pixel Project's website at thepixelproject.net. And I think that's it. Okay, so goodbye from me and goodbye from Lauren. Thank you, Lauren, so much for sharing your perspective with everybody. So we'll say goodbye, good day, good night, wherever you are in the world. Bye.